afternoon, church, and let me say a very pleasant Sabbath to you. I want to extend my apologies to you for turning up late today. My colleague was off from work, so on holiday in Spain, and I had to carry a lot of extra load this week, the last 2 weeks, this week and last week. So I was a little bit tired today, and I got up later than usual this morning. And my wife told me, "You are to be at Emmanuel today. Why are you moving around so lackadaisical?" And I said to her, "It's not a problem. Emmanuel is always late." My sincere apologies to you for delaying you today. The sermon title today is The Lord's Visitation. I would like us to focus on a few lessons that we can learn from the narrative found in the book of Ruth, in particular Ruth chapter 1. This is a very familiar story, and it has some lessons that we can learn. I believe the story was not written only as an historical record, but also as a teaching tool. I am reminded of what Paul says in the book of Romans chapter 15 and verse 4. He states that whatsoever things were written aforetime, that is in the past, were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope. So these stories are not just recorded for the sake of being stories. They were recorded to teach us many lessons. Ruth chapter 1. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled, there was famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab. He and his wife and his 2 sons. They went to sojourn. They didn't plan to stay. As many of us who would have come from the Caribbean in many years ago, we came to the UK to sojourn. For most of us, this sojourn still continues. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the name of her 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah. And they came into the country of Moab and continued there. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. And they took them wives of the women of Moab. The name of one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. And they dwelled there about 10 years. And Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them. And the woman, that's Naomi, was left of her sons and husband. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law, that she might return from the country of Moab, for she heard in the country of Moab how that the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. Wherefore she went forth out of the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return unto the land of Judah. And Naomi said unto her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each to your mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant you that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said unto her, Surely we will return with thee unto thy people. And Naomi said, Turn again, my daughters. Why will ye go with me? And are there yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Turn again, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say, I have hope, if I should have an husband also tonight, and should bear also sons, would you tarry for them until they are grown? Would you stay for them and from having husbands? Nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sake that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me. And they lifted up their voices and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth claved unto her. And she said, Behold, my sister-in-law is gone back unto her people and unto her gods, and return thou after thy sister-in-law. And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest, will I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me. When she saw that she was steadfastly minded to go with her, then she left off speaking. The Lord's visitation. This family of four, Naomi, her husband, Elimelech, and her two sons, were in trouble. A cost of living crisis had enveloped the land of Israel. A severe shortage of food had gripped the land. Whatever food was available was very expensive. The author of Ruth called it a famine. See, ironically, Bethlehem means the house of bread. But in this house, the birthplace of King David and the birthplace of King Jesus, there were no bread. Naomi and her family were in trouble. They were confronted with the prospect of starvation, and they decided to leave the house of bread to reside in Moab, believing that Moab would be the end of their troubles. For them, Moab was their salvation, their place of security and safety. They believed that Moab was the solution to their problems. At some point in everyone's life, there will be trouble. For each of us, we are either in three states at any particular time. It's either we are heading into trouble, or we are currently going through troubles, or we have just emerged out of some sort of trouble. One thing is certain, in this life, there will be troubles. Jesus says, in the world we will have tribulations, that's trouble. But be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. In this life, we will have troubles. Psalms 46, God is our refuge and strength, a present help in trouble. God knows that in this life, we will have troubles. What the Psalm 27 says, in the time of trouble, he shall hide me. In this life, there will be trouble. In this life, we will have troubles of one kind or another. Job was right when he said, man that is born of a woman is a few days and full of trouble. When I was a boy, we made our own scooters. That's different from what happens today. If you need a scooter, you order it from Amazon. But in my time, we made our own scooters. We used ball bearings for wheels. Once I had no ball bearings, so I dismantled my father's bicycle wheel and took off the hub to use instead of ball bearings. When my dad came home and found the cycle dismantled, he took his leather belt, stripped me naked. In this life, we will have troubles. For some of us, it will be marital problems. For many of us, our spouses is our worst enemy. Some would rather sleep on a housetop than to be in the same house as their spouse. Some have trouble at work. In the morning, we only go in there to work because we have no other immediate choices. There is no such thing as a trouble-free existence. Like Naomi, many of us are going through a cost of living crisis at this moment. Bills are increasing. Wages are stagnant. Funds are short. In this life, you will have troubles of one kind or another. Christians are not exempted from these troubles. Often, like Naomi, we would like to run to somewhere else to get away from our troubles. I want to let you know today there are a few things that Naomi forgot. Naomi forgot that weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. Naomi forgot what Isaiah 54 says, no weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. Naomi forgot what Isaiah 43 says, when thou passest through the waters, I will be with thee, and through the rivers, they shall not overflow thee. Naomi forgot what the sovereign says in Hebrews chapter 13, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. She forgot what the scripture says. The Lord is my helper. I will not fear what man shall do unto me. Naomi forgot that God is our refuge and our strength, a present help in times of trouble. She forgot that, and she took her family and ran to Moab, believing that the grass was greener on the other side. The text says, and they came into the country of Moab and continued there. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left, and her 2 sons. And they took them wives of the women of Moab. The name of one was Orpah, the name of the other was Ruth, and they dwelled there 10 years. And Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them. And that woman, Naomi, was left of her 2 sons and her husband. It appeared that the grass was greener on the other side. But appearances can be deceptive. Not all that glitters is gold. she left Bethlehem with her entire family and lost all of them, husband and both of her sons. While in Moab, the place she thought was the place of refuge and salvation became the place of tragedy. Death tore a family apart. One thing I have learned in this life is that you cannot run from your troubles. Trouble has this particular way of tracking you down. Fortunately, though, available to the Christian are other options. Other options than running away. And the first option is God. Peter says we should go to God, casting all our cares upon him, for he cares for you. That's good advice. God knows and understands our needs because we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. Therefore, we can come, and I love this, we can come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. There is a place we can go when we are in trouble, and that place is God. David reminds us that the Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Jesus puts it this way, come unto me, he says, come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. The first option to the Christian is not running, it's God. God deals with trouble in two ways. Sometimes God intervenes and calms the storm that troubles you. On the Sea of Galilee, when the disciples were in trouble, Jesus said to the storm, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, the Bible says, and the waves subsided. God often interjects himself into our troubled situation and removes the storm, removes that trouble that disturbs us. In other words, he either moves on us, he moves us out of the situation, or he removes the problem. So sometimes he takes us out of it, or sometimes he just removes the problem altogether. That's one way in which God deals with our troubles. The second way that God deals with our troubles is instead of calming the storm, he calms the believer. Remember another stormy night on the sea, he comforts the disciples saying, "It is I, be not afraid." God don't always calm the storms in our lives, but rather he comforts us in the midst of the storm. The Apostle Paul testifies of this. In Galatians chapter 12, Paul prayed to God to remove some sort of infirmity that was affecting his life. But God, instead of acting on the infirmity, God acted on Paul. God said to him, "My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness." So God either acts on the storm or he acts on you. But we have this firm assurance that in time of trouble, God will intervene. We have this assurance that his intervention is ever present. So sometimes you're relieved of the problem, but sometimes God comes into you and gave you that peace that passeth all understanding. Therefore, the Christian's first option is God, not Moab. But if you do go to Moab, God still provides a way. God ensures that even when Naomi was down in Moab, that she got the message. How she got it, I don't know. Facebook wasn't there. Instagram wasn't there. Email wasn't there. WhatsApp wasn't there. But she got the message. Verse 6 says, then she arose with her daughters-in-law, that she might return to the country of Moab. For she heard in the country of Moab, even in the land of Moab, away from God. God made certain that Naomi got the message. She heard while she was in Moab how that God had visited his people in giving them bread. She heard about God's visitation. In her self-imposed exile, she somehow got the news that God is blessing his people down there in Bethlehem. And she made that decision to return to the place of that blessing. Naomi could not have expected to receive much of a blessing, because a widow without sons in Israel at that time had very little prospect. The outlook was bleak. But Naomi decided that if God is blessing his people in Bethlehem, then she would want to be in that vicinity of the blessings, so that she might somehow have some of that blessings fall upon her. You see, when God is blessing others, do not grudge them. Do not envy them. Do not become jealous of them. It makes sense to hang out with them. Because if God is blessing a sister or a brother, then God is somewhere in that vicinity. And perhaps you being in that vicinity, you might catch some of that blessing. Now remember, God did not promise Lot anything. He promised Abraham a blessing. All that Lot had to do was to hang out with his uncle Abraham. And Lot became more prosperous than he ever imagined. As God blessed Abraham, Lot, being in that vicinity with his uncle, received a blessing of his own. When God was blessing Joseph in the house of Potiphar, Potiphar's household received blessings also, because Joseph was in Potiphar's house. God said to Abraham, I will bless those who bless you. We can claim that promise too. So when I see you receiving your blessing from God, I don't envy you. I bless you. Because God will bless those who bless you. I will celebrate your blessing. I will applaud your success. I will lift you up. You see, when God is in the vicinity blessing others, find yourself in that place. Naomi heard that God had visited his people in Bethlehem, and she realized that Bethlehem is the place to be, not Moab. Some of us find ourselves outside of God's blessing Because instead of being in Bethlehem, we are way over in Moab. We have got to position ourselves where God is. The woman with the issue of blood, remember her, knew, it was 12 years, knew that if she was to receive her healing, she must be where Jesus was. So she crept close enough to Jesus that she might be able to touch the hem of his robe. That's the moment. That was the moment of a visitation. You will have your visitation if you're in Bethlehem, where God is visiting, not in Moab. You see, church, we must learn the art of proximity. Position yourself for that opportunity when it comes along. Position yourself for that job when it opens up. Some of you want to get married. If you want to get married, then you must position yourself where you can be seen. Now, when I was a young man, I saw my wife we had to travel on a boat across from West Demerara, the Demerara River. There was a boat that would transport you across the Demerara River to Georgetown. And I was working in Georgetown. My wife was working in Georgetown. That time she was just a girl that I saw on the boat. And I would position myself on the boat where she can see me and I can see her. She later told me that she kept wondering what this short, big-headed boy staring at her. Short and big-headed might be the truth, but I was positioning myself. I got my blessing. Later this month will be 32 years of enjoying that blessing. If you want to get married, you got to position yourself where you can be seen. Don't wait for the blessing. Position yourself where the blessing is falling. And that is exactly what Naomi resolved to do. Naomi decided that she would return to Bethlehem and urge her daughter-in-laws to return to their homes. Orpah decided to remain in Moab. But Ruth decided to follow her mother-in-law. That decision changed their destinies. Verse 16. And Ruth said, entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest will I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me. At that time, when Ruth made that decision, it might have appeared that Ruth's decision was foolish. She decided to follow a woman who had no means of support into a country which was often hostile to our people. Yet, all of us who have read the story of Ruth in the book of Ruth will know the blessings associated with this one wise decision. Ruth came to Bethlehem at the right time in the planting season. In chapter 1 and verse 22, she married a great man named Boaz. Boaz was the great-great-grandfather of King David of Israel. And God allowed her, that's Ruth, to become part of the lineage of Jesus Ruth is one of only 4 women mentioned in the genealogy of Jesus. Ruth is the name we call our daughters. I don't know a single person named Orpah. Ruth's name is remembered. Orpah's name is forgotten. Ruth continues to inspire countless generations of people. Orpah has faded into obscurity. We know Ruth. We don't know Orpah. Lost to history. But Ruth is remembered because of that one decision that she made. Orpah chose to prioritize short-term comforts. Ruth, on the other hand, chose to prioritize long-term blessings. Orpah was short-sighted. Ruth had a vision, and she made the right decision. Ruth's decision turned Naomi's bitterness into gratitude, or unbelief into faith, or despair into hope. That one decision to make Naomi's God change a dire situation from defeat to victory. Decisions are important. The decisions we make can have both immediate and lasting consequences for us and for others. Decisions we make on who we will marry can often have lasting consequences for both ourselves and our children. The divorce rate in the United Kingdom is 46%. In Portugal, it's over 90%. Decisions on the type of career we are embarking on will shape our lives. Young people, I urge you to stop going to university and doing Mickey Mouse courses. Decision on whether you purchase a home or not will impact your life in the long term. How long are you going to continue to be a renter? Rent goes up, mortgages go down. Decisions on where you choose to live have consequences. Decisions on whether we would save and invest or spend and squander our resources can have both immediate and lasting consequences. The decision on whether Naomi's God will be your God will have eternal consequences. Almost all decisions we make, big or small, will impact our lives. Who we are, where we are in life, is not only a consequence of environmental factors, but also in a very significant way depends on the decisions we make in our everyday life. Our lives are shaped by our decisions. We could be like Orpah and prioritize short-term comforts and gratification. Or we could be like Ruth and prioritize long-term blessings. It is possible that we will miss some blessings if we fail to make wise choices and correct decisions. Joshua put these options before Israel after he, Joshua, had made his own decision. He asked, "If it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land ye dwell. But as for me, Joshua, and my house, we will serve the Lord. I say to you, church, today, will you choose to remain in Moab, or will you return to Bethlehem, where the Lord has visited his people in giving them bread? Today, the choice is before you. May God bless you.